Hi, I'm Randy Patterson, and this is Psychology Salon, a channel about psychological issues. If you like this kind of thing, click subscribe below. This post is mostly about family issues in failure to launch, or as I prefer to call it, delayed transition to adulthood. And it concerns an objection to independence that sometimes comes up. The nature of these situations is generally that we have a young adult relying more on the support of family than their circumstances might actually require. And that might be in the areas of food, housing, finances, chores, and so on. And we have others in the family providing that support when it may not be helpful to do so. Sometimes support is enabling, and sometimes it's disabling, even when it's meant to be helpful. In these families, everyone can be trying to control everyone else. The young adult usually doesn't believe that they have the capacity to be more independent, even though an external observer might see that they have more abilities than they're using. So they want to influence the parents to continue providing that support, the support that they're used to, that they've had all of their lives from infancy. The parents are focused on the young adult, wanting them to change and often engaging in a lot of nagging or criticism or helpful reminders that being at home all the time might not be such a good idea. These situations can be very diverse and very complicated, and often benefit from the help of a therapist experienced in this sort of family dynamic. This video isn't therapy. But one of the arguments that sometimes comes up in these families is from the young person saying, look, I didn't ask to be born. I never signed up for this. You were the ones who decided to have a kid. You were the ones who made me. I had no role in that. My life is your responsibility. And so it's up to you to care and provide for me for good, or until I decide that you can stop. Now, parents are typically quite agitated by this, partly because they do feel responsible. Their young adult is not doing very well, and maybe it's some deficiency of theirs that's the reason. And they've had 20 or 30 years of experience taking responsibility for their son or daughter's health and existence. And isn't that what a parent does? They take care of their children. So it sounds pretty persuasive. The problem, of course, is that there aren't any children in this house anymore. They used to have a child, but that child is gone. Now there's an adult that they happen to be related to. Parents often slip and talk about their child or their kid, and I try to intervene in that a little bit. Child? Where? What child are we talking about? I thought he was 23. That can get a little bit old. But the point is to break through this kind of thinking. If you see your adult as a child, then you're tempted to treat him like a child. And it seldom helps to infantilize an adult. But what about this argument? I didn't ask to be born. Parents who get this are often activated and they start arguing back. Well, how do you know? Maybe you just don't remember signing the contract. Or any of a variety of other approaches. But none of them work for two reasons. First, they're trying to convince their young adult who has a vested interest in not being convinced. If he changes his mind, and I say he because it's more often males who use this argument, then this puts him face to face with the situation that he's been avoiding, his own adulthood. and his own personal agency. The parents have inadvertently put him into the position of judge and jury who gets to decide on the quality of his parents' arguments. The second reason it doesn't work to argue against "I didn't ask to be born" is much simpler. It's correct. The young adult did not ask to be born, didn't ask for this life, didn't ask for these parents, didn't ask for this family. When they say they did not ask to be born, they are speaking the truth. Arguments against this are guaranteed to fail. So, what do parents do about this? Well, the first thing to do, I think, is to agree. It's true, after all, and reinforce it by broadening the principle. Well, you're right. You did not ask to be born. Neither did your sister. Neither did I, or my parents, or their parents. On this entire planet, there isn't a single human being, not a single animal, not a single insect, not a single fish that ever asked to be born, as far as we know. I didn't sign a contract, and I didn't choose my family. And you're absolutely right. You didn't either. But then there's the "and so." And so it's the responsibility of parents to go on feeding and housing and providing for their offspring, not as long as it's necessary, but as long as the son or daughter desires that level of support. And, so this argument goes, it's entirely up to the younger person to decide what the older person does, and for how long. Potentially until the older person, the parent, dies of old age. And that applies even to things that the younger person could technically do for himself or herself. Parents who get persuaded by this go on providing support that their adult does not need, with the result that the young adult never develops the skills or habits to take care of themselves. In effect, the parents' help contributes to the disability. When I began my career, I worked for a time in a rehabilitation hospital with people who had spinal cord injuries. Many of these had lower back injuries, meaning that they needed to use a wheelchair, but they had full upper body control. Now, there are a lot of adaptations that need to happen when your life changes that way. And some of those have to do with family and friends. They're struck by this really regrettable injury that's happened to their loved ones, and they want to help lighten the load, make it easier. So they instinctively move to push the wheelchair and help them navigate around even the gentlest slopes and curb ramps. And cooking and cleaning can be a bit more awkward, so they pitch in to do that. Now, one of the interventions that we needed to do was to help family step gently and gradually back and let the person in the wheelchair deal with situations themselves. Hands off, figure out how to do things, develop the upper body strength to propel themselves. Some of the disability comes from the injury. Some of it can come from the help. In the same way, the family of an able-bodied young adult can, by doing more than the young adult needs, contribute to incapacity. So how do you convince the young adult of that when they may be highly motivated not to see it? The answer is, you don't. They are free to believe what they want. That because they never asked to be born, because they signed no contract, the people who bore or adopted them have to do what they're told until death. Keep working, keep shopping, keep cooking, keep cleaning, keep earning, so that the young adult does not have to do these things for himself or herself. That's a kind of contract, and they're free to believe in it. But of course, a contract requires two signatures, not one. It requires the other party to sign on. In this case, the parents. It's really up to them to decide what level of support to provide. Now, of course, we hope that parents will provide support that helps the young adult develop into the most capable and self-sustaining person that they can be. But it is ultimately up to them. And there is no obligation, legal or otherwise, for them to provide support that only magnifies the problem. Trying to convince the young adult that this is the case reveals the problem. This is not a relationship between equals, at least not in the minds of the parents. The young adult is the boss, and the parents are the servants. The parents believe that to decide for themselves what they will do with their own lives, they have to get the boss, the young adult, to agree and give them permission. But they don't. Everyone in the system is an adult and gets to decide for themselves what they will do and what they will not do. When parents stop behaving as servants, everyone tends to benefit. So, I didn't ask to be born. No, you didn't. None of us did. We found ourselves in this difficult world in a time and a place and a family that we never chose. And our life remains our own, to make of it what we will. And the fact that we didn't ask for it doesn't mean that anyone else becomes our servant. It's still our life, and their life is still theirs. Parenting is difficult, and families get into these situations accidentally, usually with the very, very best of intentions. It's hard to navigate a route out, but the path is not by accepting a lifetime of enabling imposed by someone else. Now, there are other videos on this channel on the subject of failure to launch or delayed transition to adulthood, and many of these concern parenting. Click the subscribe button for more. For parents who find themselves in this situation, I also have an online course, The Parent Trap, available from my education site here. Thanks for watching.